you gotta go to the office. S3. Okay? They just called me. Go to the Grant's office. That's what that's. Okay, so you can write down really briefly the reason why we have the respiratory system is because in the end it's going to help us form ATP in the cells. So put respiratory helps form ATP in cells. Why in the world, or how in the world, where in the world is San Diego? Carmen San Diego, sorry. Why is ATP even relevant to the respiratory system?
We need energy.
Okay, yeah, everything needs energy, but respiratory, okay, you're thinking gas exchange, right? So specifically, oxygen. Thank you. Okay, so the respiratory system is going to help provide oxygen for what type of cellular respiration? Aerobic, right. Aerobic cellular respiration. And how many ATP does that process make?
36.
36, right. And so let's go ahead, and from aerobic there were 3 steps. The first step was called
glycolysis.
Thank you, glycolysis, and that made 2 ATP. The second step was called, started with the guy's name, started with K. Krebs. The Calvin cycle is part of the dark reactions of photosynthesis. People mix these up all the time. So the second step is called the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. And that one also makes 2 ATP. And then the third one, sorry, arrows are off there. The third one was the big one, was 3 letters. Electron transport chain, and that made 32 ATP. So for a total of 36 ATP. All right, so that is why our respiratory system is extremely important, because if we can't get the oxygen to the cells, to what part of the cells, by the way? What organelle? Right, the mitochondria. If we can't get it to the mitochondria, we're never going to be able to make ATP, and then our body dies from the inside out. Okay, so that's pretty bad. So that's the importance of the respiratory system. And I'll tell you what to write. Don't write down much more past this. So, we just talked about that. Good. All right, so here's your respiratory system. Ooh, ah. Ooh, ah. Thank you. Oh, who's ever had the hiccups? All right, your hiccups are caused by this thing, your diaphragm, which is underneath your lungs, like spazzing out, okay? When your diaphragm spazzes out, it pushes air from your lungs, and you go. It's just your muscle, because your diaphragm is a muscle, and when it spazzes out, it just forces the air in and out of your lungs uncontrollably. Isn't that kind of funny? Like it's just a muscle spasm. And so you have to hold your breath or drink water, because what happens is it cools down the diaphragm down here, or it causes it to be still. Yeah.
Why whenever people run a lot, they tell you to stand up like this? I understand opening the lungs, but it doesn't open your diaphragm. And if the diaphragm's a muscle, you can't open it.
You can stretch it, though. I think that's the purpose. I think it's for stretching. All right, so let's watch this video on how the lungs work. And you guys write down 5 facts for me, and that's it. This one's it's a TED Ed video. It's a little, I think it's 3 minutes long. Yeah, 3 minutes, 22 seconds. Write down 5 facts. Heads up, hands off your eyes. I'll squirt water at you if I need to.
Many of us have hundreds of things on our minds at any moment, often struggling to keep track of everything we need to do. But fortunately, there's one important thing we don't have to worry about remembering: breathing. When you breathe, you transport oxygen to the body's cells to keep them working, and clear your system of the carbon dioxide that this work generates. Breathing, in other words, keeps the body alive. So how do we accomplish this crucial and complex task without even thinking about it? The answer lies in our body's respiratory system. Like any machinery, it consists of specialized components and requires a trigger to start functioning. Here, the components are the structures and tissues making up the lungs, as well as the various other respiratory organs connected to them. And to get this machine moving, we need the autonomic nervous system, our brain's unconscious control center for the vital functions. As the body prepares to take in oxygen-rich air, this system sends a signal to the muscles around your lungs. flattening the diaphragm and contracting the intercostal muscles between your ribs to create more space for the lungs to expand. Air then whooshes into your nose and mouth, through your trachea, and into the bronchi that split at the trachea's base, with one entering each lung. Like tree branches, these small tubes divide into thousands of tinier passages, called bronchioles. It's tempting to think of the lungs as huge balloons, but instead of being hollow, they're actually spongy inside, with the bronchioles running throughout the parenchyma tissue. At the end of each bronchiole is a little air sac called an alveolus, wrapped in capillaries full.
Okay, this is one fact you need to write down. Alveolus is one, alveoli are many. A-L-V-E-O-L-U-S. Are alveoli, like ravioli, ravioli, or was that it? These are the tiny, tiny, tiny little bitty parts at the very end of the branching parts of the lungs, and they are the most important parts in my opinion. Okay, come on up here and just take notes with us, okay? So this is the alveoli. It's going to tell you that there's capillaries wrapped around it, and you're going to tell me why it's important in a second.
Of red blood cells containing special proteins called hemoglobin. The air you breathed in fills these sacs, causing the lungs to inflate. Here is where the vital exchange occurs. At this point, the capillaries are packed with carbon dioxide, and the air sacs are full of oxygen.
All right, so if the air sacs from the lungs are full of oxygen and the capillaries of the blood are full of carbon dioxide, what do we want to get out of our body? CO2. What do we want to get in our body? Oxygen. So what's going to happen here? They're just going to exchange, right? The oxygen from the lungs are going to go into the blood. Carbon dioxide from the blood is going to go into the lungs. And then what do we do with that carbon dioxide? Yeah, breathe out. Good. This is just simple. Is this osmosis or diffusion? Diffusion, right? Because osmosis is movement of water. Question? Oh, well, let me finish this, okay?
But due to the basic process of diffusion, the molecules of each gas want to move to a place where there is a lower concentration of their kind. So as oxygen crosses over to the capillaries, the hemoglobin grabs it up, while the carbon dioxide is unloaded into the lungs. The oxygen-rich hemoglobin is then transported throughout the body via the bloodstream. But what do our lungs do with all that carbon dioxide? Exhale it, of course. The autonomic nervous system kicks in again, causing the diaphragm to ball up and the intercostal muscles to relax, making the chest cavities smaller and forcing the lungs to compress. The carbon dioxide-rich air is expelled, and the cycle begins again. So that's how these spongy organs keep our bodies efficiently supplied with air. Lungs inhale and exhale between 15 and 25 times a minute, which amounts to an incredible 10,000 liters of air each day. That's a lot of work, but don't sweat it. Your lungs and your autonomic nervous system have got it covered.
So, why is your diaphragm important here? What did it say your diaphragm did? All right, so when your diaphragm goes down, what's it doing to your lungs? Yes, it's allowing you to breathe in and your lungs expand. They need more space. And when your diaphragm contracts and it goes down, it moves back up, what does it do? Compresses it and makes your lungs smaller, and you have to force your air out. So yes, your diaphragm is a muscle, but it's extremely important to your respiratory system. Okay, let's go through a couple more of these. All right. Oh, and the alveoli, however you're gonna say it, they look like grapes. It's a cluster of grapes, okay? And you can see the capillaries all the way around it. Wherever you wrote alveoli, whatever you want to say it, I would like for you to write grape-like structures or grape-like sacs. I want you to be able to recognize it in a picture. And if you just remember they have that kind of like a grape bunch look to them, you should be able to remember. And you know that they're there because the capillaries need to have some place to expel that carbon dioxide and take in the oxygen. And these are tiny, tiny, tiny on the end of the bronchioles, which are the branches of your lungs. So that's why they're there and not like up in your mouth. But that would be looking weird if you had a bunch of like weird grape-like structures in your mouth. So they're definitely in your lungs. Alrighty, thumbs up, good here? Okay, cool. Alveoli. Okay, now this is a disease you have to know about the respiratory system. So write down tuberculosis. We're going to kind of do one disease almost per system here. Tuberculosis, and I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to read this to you, but you guys can write down just a couple of facts about it. Okay, so tuberculosis is going to be cough, cough, okay? It's going to be causing people to have a respiratory illness. So, I am the king of the pathogens, killing more people than any other infectious agent and affecting a staggering 1/3 of the world's population. Mwahahaha. Treating me requires a combination of antibiotics taken for 6 months. Around 6 months. You can see I form a latent infection with no, or sorry, you see, I can form a latent infection with no obvious symptoms that is really difficult to cure. I'm quite happy to wait around for decades in this latent stage until your immune system becomes weakened by age or an infection like HIV. Then I attack and turn my victim's lungs into cottage cheese. Symptoms of tuberculosis include a persistent cough, often with blood, night sweats, and weight loss. I've been around for ages, but you humans didn't discover me until 1882 when a guy called Robert Koch managed to culture me. I was pretty worried about my future when pasteurization of milk improved hygiene, the bovine blah 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 vaccine, and antibiotics came into the scene into the Western world. Luckily though, my good friend HIV is now letting me infect more and more people every year, mainly in the developing world. Multi-drug resistance is doing me lots of good too. And soon you humans won't be able to treat me at all. Cough, cough. So, you can see that's what it forms in your lungs. Ew, gross. But tuberculosis is actually a huge thing right now. Because people, the multi-drug resistance, they treat it with one antibiotic, they think it's going to be fine, doesn't kill it. Treats it with a second one, doesn't kill it. Treats it with a third one, doesn't kill it. I think there's right now one drug that will kill tuberculosis, and if it becomes resistant to it through evolution, they're screwed. Like whoever has tuberculosis will die. And so tuberculosis, normally, who's ever had a TB shot? Maybe? Okay. If you get a job up, if you try to be employed, or have to do an interview someplace, or try to volunteer someplace, they'll ask you to bring in like a vaccination record that you've been vaccinated against TB. The way they do it is they inject something underneath your skin. It's just like a little bubble, and if it turns red the next day, that means you have been exposed to tuberculosis. It doesn't mean you have tuberculosis, it means you've been exposed to it. Most people's immune systems are pretty strong and will fight it. But when you get old and decrepit and your immune system kind of weakens, those latent infections, those ones that live in your body for years and years and years, they can kind of flare up. And so in the end, you could actually get tuberculosis even if you've had it for 30 years and you've never seen the symptoms. You could actually show the symptoms of it and start coughing up blood, and your lungs would start to kind of shut down. So HIV is a good friend of it, because HIV turns to what disease? AIDS. Autoimmune, or the immune deficiency, thank you, disease. And so your immune system is deficient and it cannot function to protect you, even against the smallest bugs, like pollen or other antigens. So tuberculosis is one you have to know affects the respiratory system, okay? That's an important one that you need to know. Okay, I'm going to skip this for now because I think we can do photosynthesis in a little bit here. Circulatory. Ready? Hand in hand with respiratory. All right, why do we need a circulatory system? Basically, I want you to write down, diffusion is too slow. Okay, that's it. Diffusion is too slow. If we waited for our body to take that oxygen from our lungs all the way down to our feet, it would probably take 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes. Your feet would start to die before they got the oxygen. So your blood circulates once a minute around your body, and that once a minute means the oxygen's getting down to every cell about once a minute, and it's taking out the carbon dioxide. So if you don't have your body to circulate, if your circulatory system can't circulate the oxygen to, we have a huge body, right? Then your cells would actually end up dying before the oxygen made it there. So diffusion's too slow, so we need something else to circulate. Therefore, we have blood. Blood helps us circulate the oxygen. And then the blood, I'm going to only tell you to write down these last parts down here. The blood has a couple things in it. You guys have probably heard of red blood cells, plasma, and so forth. I want you to write down blood has RBCs, which is red blood cells, WBCs, which is white blood cells. Just write down the names, don't have to write down the descriptions, and platelets. We're going to head up. So RBCs, red blood cells, WBCs, white blood cells, and then platelets. Now, which of these do people who are anemic, they have anemia, or sickle cell anemia. Which of these cells are affected by that?
Red blood cells.
Right, so sickle cell anemia is going to affect red blood cells. And that means that they have those crescent-shaped cells, and so what's going to not be functional inside of that red blood cell? Hemoglobin, so it can't carry oxygen. Good. What parasite causes malaria? The mosquito carries something in its gut. It's a protist. Malaria is caused by Plasmodium. Always think of Imodium, like for your gut, and malaria is carried in the gut of the mosquito. All right, so malaria and sickle cell anemia go hand in hand because there's that protective factor, because the malaria will only infect people with nice, healthy red blood cells. If you have sickle cell anemia, they don't like to reproduce in your cells, so you actually have a protection against malaria. Okay, platelets. Somebody who's unable to clot, they're a free bleeder. What disease is that? Hemophilia, right. Hemophilia, what kind of genetic disorder is that? Sex-linked, right. So X-linked or sex-linked, right? And that means, do mostly guys or girls get this? Guys, right, because if a guy gets an X chromosome and it has hemophilia disease on it, they have no choice. They have to express that disease. The girl gets it, they get one that's hemophilia X and one that's a normal X. Do they have hemophilia? Nope. Nope. But if they get two hemophilia X's, definitely. Right? They have to show that disease. And then white blood cells is going to be related to our immune system, so we're going to get to that here soon. All right. Oh, I already showed you that one. All right. And let's match these real fast. Match these and then we'll stop. Which of these, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, enzymes, or starches, which of these are composed of simple sugars? All right, so you say carbohydrates, let's see. Okay. Composed of amino acids. Proteins. Made of fatty acids. Didn't mix these up here. Speeds up chemical reactions and breaks down materials. Okay. Okay, so this is where I want you to see. Quick energy, would that be a big, huge, long polysaccharide that you could break down, or would it be a single sugar?
Single sugar.
Probably a single sugar. So the starch is composed of simple sugars, many simple sugars. I'm going to say is starch. Carbohydrates provide quick energy. I believe that this will be our success right here. Check. Yes, so it's only because carbohydrates is a general word, and that's generally providing quick energy, where the long starches are going to be composed of lots of little single sugars. All right, last 5 minutes, pull out your study guide, part 3, and start now. I'll show you pack up in 5 minutes. So if you want to pack up, you have to pull out your study guide.